When a man decorated with the Medal of Honor, Navy Cross, 2 Navy Distinguished Service Medals, 2 Legion of Merit Medals, a Distinguished Flying Cross, and a Congressional Gold Medal tells you 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2, you need to stop whatever you're doing and listen. This man is telling us that Antarctica isn't what we think it is, that it's actually an advanced continent where people have been living for generations. If he's right, everything we've been told so far is a lie. We already know they lie to us, but this would be the biggest lie of all. You then start to realize that the lies aren't the problem. The real problem is what's being covered up in Antarctica, and that's why they're lying. Admiral Richard E. Byrd was one of the most decorated officers in the U.S. Navy. He was the only person in New York to have 3 parades held in his honor. He was also one of only 4 U.S. military officials entitled to wear a medal with his own image on it. When it came to achievements, credibility, and accolades, there was no one like Richard E. Byrd. But Byrd was best known for his explorations. He explored places no one wanted to go. Byrd always wanted to be first in everything. It was like an obsession for him. That's why he had many first awards, like being the youngest admiral at 41. This obsession with being first is why he led 5 different expeditions to Antarctica from the early 1900s to the early 2000s. While the last 3 trips were funded by the U.S. government, the first 2 were paid for out of his own pocket and by some supporters. Byrd's first trip to Antarctica was in 1928 with 2 ships and 3 planes. Throughout the summer, trips were made to take photographs and study the rocks. Constant radio contact with the outside world was maintained. In the summer of 1933 and 1934, Byrd made his second trip and worked alone for 5 months at an advanced base with a meteorological station. During this expedition, he nearly died from carbon monoxide poisoning from a stove with inadequate airflow. While these were great and useful discoveries, they weren't the expeditions people talked about. The first 2 were far from any controversy, but the third wasn't. And strangely, this was when the government started getting involved in Byrd's expeditions. From 1946 to 1947, Byrd led an expedition called Operation High Jump, which established a research base called Little America on the Ross Ice Shelf. World War II had shown that U.S. ships and planes were not suited to cold weather. Ships operating in the Arctic often froze. Planes from Greenland and even Iceland were crashing just because of the weather. In response, the U.S. took a number of steps to make it easier to use these ships and planes in Arctic conditions. At the same time, they wanted to see if this could be done over long distances. Operation High Jump was created to answer these questions and to test how well the equipment could withstand the cold. A naval task force would go to Antarctica as part of an exercise to see how well the equipment held up to the cold, then map a large portion of the terrain, either to claim it or to satisfy the Pentagon's curiosity. The best person for this kind of job was the fearless and experienced Admiral Byrd. The operation went so well that it was terminated early. Thanks to this mission, ships and planes were winterized in the years after High Jump so that they could go to war in case a war broke out with the Soviets. The best-known example is the winterization of nuclear-capable B-29 bombers so they could fly from Alaska. What I've told you so far was the government's version of the story, but this is where people start asking questions. If it's just an exercise, why are you going with 14 ships, 33 planes, and about 4,700 men, heavily armed? There were 2 destroyer tenders, 2 heavily armed seaplanes, and an attack submarine, all loaded with the Navy's best weapons. That was a lot of equipment and manpower for just an exercise. Apparently, they needed that many to fight the Nazis in Antarctica. In December 1938, Hitler already knew he was about to start a war, so he was putting things in order and getting help from all sides, even from areas people would say were crazy to even think about. Imagine you're on the verge of war, and then you send your troops to find mysterious ancient artifacts that could be used to your advantage. Sounds silly, doesn't it? But not for Hitler. Anything that could help him was being investigated. That's why he approved many expeditions. One of these expeditions began on December 17, 1938, when the ship Schwabenland was sent to Antarctica on a secret mission. On board were scientists, engineers, and also members of the Tula Society, a German occultist group. The Tula Society had many beliefs, and many of these beliefs were based on racism and harming those they considered inferior, especially Jews. But one of their beliefs was that a highly advanced human-like race called Aryans lived somewhere deep within the Earth, and the entrance to the Aryan world was at the South Pole. The secret mission given to the SS Schwabenland by Hitler was to find a location for a secret underground base and to make contact with the Aryans living in the hollow Earth. Once contact was made, they were to negotiate access to their technology so they could use it in the upcoming war. The ship reached the Antarctic coast a month later, and over the next few weeks, they mapped hundreds of thousands of square kilometers of the continent. About 240 kilometers inland, aerial reconnaissance found an area described as an Arctic oasis. This area covered about 480 square kilometers, was ice-free, filled with warm water, and even contained vegetation, which shouldn't have been there. The ocean beneath the oasis had a geothermal vent that kept the area relatively warm. This was an ideal location for a base, especially for the Thule Society. This is where the Nazis would establish their underground facility, known as Base 211. Throughout World War II, Base 211 grew into a massive complex the size of a small city. The American government, realizing what was happening, was concerned about these developments in Antarctica. They say, keep your friends close and your enemies closer, and America was going to do just that with Operation High Jump. Operation High Jump was supposed to last 6 to 8 months, but you remember it was shortened because the mission was successful. The mission lasted only 40 days, and almost everyone was evacuated almost immediately, and the operation was terminated. The Navy said winter came early and the weather got bad, but February in Antarctica was the peak of summer. Their explanation didn't match the facts. Remember, they went there in the first place to test their equipment against the cold. If what they said was true, the weather should have been perfect for testing. This is where the conspiracy theory started to emerge. Did something happen in Antarctica that caused the massive Navy group to return to the United States? Probably to reassess and regroup. So, what were they regrouping for? For a long time, no one knew, but everything changed when a diary was found on one of Admiral Byrd's routine flights. Admiral Byrd was flying over the South Pole, talking to the American people over live radio relayed to listeners by the Navy. It was like watching your favorite influencer talk or share their experiences. But during the broadcast, Byrd was cut off from his radio monologue for almost 3 hours. No one could hear him, not even the Navy. This was a problem. No one knew where Byrd was, or could communicate with him. After Byrd released his diary, we were able to see what happened during those 3 lost hours. We are crossing over small mountain ranges and still proceeding northward. Beyond the mountains, there is what appears to be a valley with a small river or stream running through the center. There should be no green valley below. There is definitely something wrong and abnormal here. We should be over ice and snow. To the port side, there are large forests growing on the mountain slopes. Our navigation instruments are still spinning. The gyroscope is oscillating back and forth. Byrd had stumbled upon a place he couldn't explain. Antarctica is one of the coldest places on Earth. There shouldn't be warmth and green vegetation. Even more confusingly, Byrd mentions that he can no longer see the sun, which was worrying for him because he was having trouble with his navigation system. So he had to use the sun to navigate, and now he couldn't find the sun. The light here seems different. I can't see the sun anymore. We make another left turn and we spot what seems to be a large animal below. It looks like an elephant. No, it looks more like a mammoth. This is incredible. But there it is. Decrease altitude to 1,000 feet and take binoculars to better examine the animal. It is confirmed it is definitely a mammoth-like animal. Report this to base camp. He tried to reach them by radio, but the radio wasn't working, and that's when he saw it. Ahead, we spot what seems to be a city. This is impossible. The plane is light and seems to be floating in a strange way. The controls are not responding. My God, there are strange types of aircraft outside our port and starboard wings. They are approaching rapidly. They are disc-shaped and have a shiny appearance. They are close enough that we can see the markings on them. Some kind of swastika. It was wonderful. Byrd didn't even know what he was seeing. Was it an alien? An ancient civilization? Or were they really the Aryans the Germans were looking for? Byrd's radio finally started working, and a voice speaking English with a Nordic or German accent was heard. The voice told Byrd that they would help him land and that he shouldn't worry. He was in good hands. This was happening during World War II, so being told to trust someone speaking with a German accent was like asking the devil for help. But Byrd couldn't do anything or escape. His plane's engines stopped, and it went under a strange control. It was driving itself and even landed safely on its own. You know, Drew, a few men are approaching our plane on foot. They are tall and blonde. In the distance, there is a large city shimmering with rainbow colors. I don't know what's going to happen now, but I don't see any weapons on those approaching. I hear a voice ordering me to open the cargo door, saying my name. I obey. Byrd was taken from the plane and put into a small, platform-like vehicle without wheels and taken to the city. Byrd was amazed by what he saw. A very beautiful city made of crystal materials. He was then taken to a large building where he met the person known as the Master. I see a man with delicate features and the marks of years. He is sitting at a long table. He motions for me to sit down. After I sit, he brings his fingertips together and smiles. He speaks softly again and says, "We have allowed you to enter here because you are of noble character and well known on the surface world, Admiral." "Surface world?" I stammered. "Yes," the Master replied with a smile. "You are in the domain of the Ariani, the inner world of the Earth." Byrd was shocked. If what the Master said was true, then everything we knew about our universe and Earth was wrong. Byrd's amazement and the hollow Earth theory. The hollow Earth theory is an idea that some people believe there is a cavity at the center of the Earth and even life there. In the 1690s, English astronomer Edmund Halley proposed to the Royal Society of London that the Earth was made up of spherical shells rotating in different directions, and that life could be supported in the spaces between these shells. In the 1810s, American officer John Cleves Sims Jr. suggested that these spheres could be reached through holes at the North and South poles. Some people claim that this place is home to aliens, Vikings, ancient cultures, and even Nazis trying to escape the Allies. They also claim that Adam and Eve in the Bible were expelled from inside the earth to the outside, and that the lost tribes of Israel migrated from outside to inside. Of course, you're not aware of this because this theory has been debunked by many governments. But if what Byrd said and encountered is true, then we've all been living a lie. The Master told Byrd that he didn't want to harm him, but he wanted to talk to him because Byrd was a respected person whose opinions mattered in the surface world. This was true. The Master then explained that the reason they stopped Byrd's plane was to give him a message and ask him to deliver this message to the surface world. The atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki were a cause for concern for them. The world had never seen anything like it before. It was so alarming that they had to take the risk of sending their flying saucers to investigate what was happening. Surprisingly, this coincides with numerous UFO eyewitness accounts recorded during that period, and strangely, these UFOs are mostly seen near nuclear facilities that could be used for nuclear war. It is then often reported that something stops at these facilities, or that the facility is sabotaged, just like in the Sellafield spaceman incident. This is a strange thing to think or say, but it's also strange that World War III hasn't happened. I love peace, but this just seems odd because I know humanity loves division more than unity. Maybe we owe our lives to these people. The Master went on to explain that they had to intervene because humanity had learned to play with certain powers. Their representatives had delivered messages to the world's powers, but these messages had been ignored. The human race had now reached a point of no return because some would rather destroy the world than give up their power. The dark ages that will now come upon your race will cover the earth like a shroud. But I believe that some of your race will survive this storm. Beyond that, I cannot say. In the distance, we see a new world rising from the ruins of your race, seeking its lost and legendary treasures. And they will be here, my son, safe in our keeping. When that time comes, we will emerge again to revitalize your culture and your race. Perhaps by then, you will have learned the futility of war and strife And after that time, certain parts of your culture and science will be returned for your race to begin anew. You, my son, are to return to the surface world with this message." Once Byrd was given the full message, he was escorted out of the room, and soon they were back in their plane and taken out of the Crystal City. As soon as they left the city, a radio message came. "We are leaving you now, Admiral. Your controls are free. Auf Wiedersehen." And it was all over. Byrd was confused about what had happened. Finally, his radio was working and the Navy could reach him. On March 11th, 1947, after the expedition was cut short, Byrd attended a staff meeting at the Pentagon where he was debriefed. He told everyone at the meeting what he had seen and the message he had received in the Crystal City. Thank you for watching. You can find the second part of our documentary next week on our channel.